So, what are we talking about today?
How to get out of your own way.
How to get out of your own way. Something you and I are personally masters at doing, right? Getting in our own way all the goddamn time. So, this is just as much for us as it is for anyone else, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, I don't know about you, but when I started, I was like, I have to be like this perfect place where nothing in my life has problems. And that stopped me from doing so much. And I remembered my very first intuitive teacher saying to me, if you have a Dixie cup of water and someone is thirsty, why would you not give that to them? You're waiting until you have a jug. I was like, oh.
Ooh, I really like that. That's pretty powerful.
And it doesn't fall into the fake it where you make it thing. But I feel like my longest, biggest reservations have been around quality, right? Like I have lots of ways that I get in my own way. And as we grow, I think we start to recognize them, right? That's the thing, is when you're like, oh, this is that. This is me doing that. And how fast you turn that around. But one of my biggest realizations is my, and careful what you wish for, especially right now, is right? I have these fears of like, what if A, B, C, or D, like, what if, this is my biggest fear. I'm going to share this with people. My biggest fear is that people will be unhappy and ask for a refund. Okay. I know that happens, but I really feel like I've been great about working with people because I deliver products of figuring out the win-win solution. And this week, when I was like, I think I shared my new moon ceremony of like I want to clear some stuff and I want to bring in these things, and the things that were standing in the way of my great fears of having people be unhappy with me. I had two refund requests, one for a commissioned painting, and simply because, in both cases, because they needed money desperately, but it was the way they handled it was adamant, unreasonable. And this is, some women really get into the like, well, I'm just going to be a bigger fucking bitch and I will get what I want. And I refused to respond to that energy. And it felt, one person was like, wow, you're cold. I'm like, no, I'm just being matter of fact. I'm not upset about this. I'm upset. I want you to be happy. But I realized afterwards.
Hey, Tessa.
Hi, Tessa. How much that held me back of like, I just want to please. And although I've shed layers of people pleasing around quality, it's so important to me. This morning, I was like, I want to be the A student. I want to be perfect. I was like, okay, but excellence and perfection are not the same thing. I deliver excellence, but perfection is just, makes you crazy.
So for me, it is my lack of education. I don't know, like 4 or 5 classes short of a bachelor's in anthropology, which at this stage in my life does me no fucking good, right? Like there is nothing about a degree in anthropology, a bachelor's degree in anthropology, that will ever serve me in any fucking way. And then I'm like, well, what if people won't hire me because I don't have a degree? This is such a huge thing for me. So yesterday, I was putting together my new one sheet for retainer clients, and I was filling it up with all of these programs that I am proficient in. There's 33 on the sheet, and there are more missing because there is literally not enough room. But I'm getting in my way about my fucking degree. Like...
Right. I saw that. I was like, holy crap. And I know the stuff you can do, but I was like, oh my God. Like, and I do, I've seen some serious tech credentials. I was like, holy crap. Like, it doesn't surprise me as good as you are with all of them. And even the new ones we've discovered. I mean, there's always more to discover, like, because you can figure out like our little tech hiccup we were laughing about it yesterday in the nerd den. So I have some IT friends that I work with that do all the stuff I can't solve. I don't do.
Okay, but I love that it's called the nerd den. Okay, that's just amazing.
It was called that because the office, we don't have, because I work partly with them to do their web designing on the side, for anybody that they have that needs web design and coding problems and stuff like that, because they mostly do security. But the office, it got the name because I went in there and they're in their jammies. Guys were working in their pajamas.
Hey, Rachel, so glad you could join us.
And it was like what they were having tech disaster. It was a tech disaster Monday, and anyway, and as systems tend to fail over weekends, and then everybody
of course they always do on Friday fucking night,
right? Yeah, he's like, someday I'm going on a vacation. And I'm like, yeah, when you hire 5 more people. Anyway, and they were alternating like corn and Hawaiian and corn. And I was like, what is this playlist? And then there's like maps of Hawaii and there's cats everywhere. And then it's like, here, you want some Twix? And I was like, I love this place. Anyway, totally off topic. Sorry about that. But yeah, like the ways that we see ourselves, like and I was just thinking in the shower, like our actual self-destruction, I think this is so important because the more stuck you feel, the chances are the more powerful you are. Think about it. If you can build a fucking roadblock, if you can manifest car crash, illness, disaster, like whatever. I mean, think about how fast you pull in the stuff that you don't care about. Like that's easy, right? You know? And then think about the stuff you're like, oh my God, why am I always creating this disaster? You can create the magic. We can create the magic.
Reframing is, I think, probably the most important skill I have ever learned. And I use it for everything. I use it to reframe my negative language. I use it to reframe my goals from like non-actionable ideas to things that can be accomplished. And yeah, with manifestation too, you have to catch those thoughts, right? You have to hear them in your head. So how do you do that? Mostly through meditation and writing, right?
Yeah, I have to say the last week, I have felt so much stuff coming through, and I've been working on, like, I really have released a lot of stuff in this last 4-week cycle. And so it went to, well, yeah. And my walking meditations, because I'm I tend to be a busy minded person. So sitting for me is good with some stuff. It's for, I'm noticing now, sometimes I need to go up and sometimes I need to come down. And depending on what I'm needing, like if I want an idea, I have to get into theta state of some sort. So shower, bath, nap, walk, just kind of depends. Like those are the ones but my journaling this last week has gone from like 3 pages to 12 to 20 in the morning.
Wow. That's a lot of purge.
Well, it's not just purge though, because I started writing in what I want. So I have this like, I started with the like, okay, do I need to coach myself? Because I want to practice on myself, because I practice with coaches. Like, anybody ever fantasy coach in here? Like you pick the coach of your dreams, like, okay, I'm gonna have a session with them in my head. What would they say? Because that's really you, right? So I was like, how well can I coach myself out of the shit? Right? Out of what I'm feeling right now, because I'm making big transitions in my personal coaching. I'm going back into doing one-on-one. And I said I'd never do a course again. Has everybody heard me say that? And
at least a dozen times, yes.
Right. And I was just like, well, what's the deal? Like, why do I keep coming back to it? Right. So it was like, why do I keep coming back to it? I'm like, because in my mind, where the disconnect has been is I want to create what I would do in person with people who can't be with me in person. How do I do that? How do I create real, authentic conversation? And I think what it's going to be is hybrid, is that they have one-on-one and a group session where we work through, because I want to, like, it all came to me 4 programs at once. I was like, shit. Okay. Right.
That's a hell of a download.
Thanks. Yeah. I'm surprised. Yesterday it was very hard. I forgot to eat. I was very on track to do some things. Like I can get so into the zone, but that's also the place where like surprise money. Yesterday I found a jewelry cache. Like remember we talked about those new moon things, and the more I get out of my way, the more stuff is like, oh, here's all your jewelry from high school, including all my black onyx rings. I used to wear 6 of them. And all of a sudden, remember we were talking about 6 never comes up. Well, my life is only 3 and 6 these days. So anyway.
So that's fascinating. Tessa's reading yesterday. I don't know if you caught it in her group, but all 3 of her cards were 3s. There was a 3, a 6, and a 9.
That's awesome.
So there must be something around the energy of 3s right now, and that's worth paying attention to and cultivating. If it shows up in your life, then you absolutely should pay attention to those. So you talked about having conversations with your coach self. Have you read Diana Herself by Martha Beck?
No, it's the only one I haven't read of hers.
Okay, so it's fiction, it's parable, and it is very like her other work in terms of, you know, getting down and doing the work, but it's very accessible for people, I think, because it's not you going through these terrible transformations, right? It's Diana going through these terrible transformations, and so you can root her on. Diana has conversations with a boar whose name happens to be herself. I don't think it's really much of a spoiler when I tell you that in the end, she figures out that herself is herself. It's the conversation she's having with her inner guide. So how do you have those conversations? Are you doing both voices? What does that feel like for you?
I honestly, so I write them with a hashtag, and I do. I really believe it's just me and my higher self, because I really, you know, at the risk of blowing up my own programs, I really believe like coaches really are great reflectors. Right. That's why you find people you're attracted to. And then you're like, why did I have that? I'm not even resonating at all with that. Right. Because you're in a different place. So what I'm always trying to tap into is deeper trust of myself. So I do it physically by a line, like, I really need some help with this, or this sucks. Well, why does that suck? And I base it a little bit on Hakomi teachings, which is, there's this thread of like, and what are you going to do about it? And how does that feel? And what are you going to do about it? And how does that feel? Now, eventually your brain just goes, it's because of 4th fucking grade, you know, like eventually some part will be really gross and bratty, and you'll know when you're there, because it's not like I'm not in alignment. I mean, like it doesn't use buzzwords. It doesn't use, it's like, and then it's like, bleh. And so I'm always trying to get myself into that place where I'm calling it like a personal channel, where I have this feeling, and how do I get to that feeling in the thing that I'm doing, right? That place of alignment, that place on the beach where I'm one with everything. How do I get that right here on this live stream, when I'm driving, when I'm talking to my mother, that's my thing. And so I try to answer from that place, but it really becomes, it's not a place I start with normally, because I need to get the like, I woke up and I'm grumpy and I'm tired, and why do I drink this coffee? And maybe I want some of this. Oh yeah, no, I should do this today. And do I like bread? Do I like my sheets? You know, like that kind of mind jabber stuff. Once that clears out of like, okay, what's on my heart? What's bothering me? And then I do line them and let them talk like characters in a play. That's probably what's gotten so long lately, is like, it takes a while to get through the crap. Like it's like the first 10 minutes of a therapy session. Nobody sits down and, well, sometimes you sit down and go, right, but it's, you know, like 40 minutes in where it's
like for me, it's always the breakthrough is 3 minutes before I'm out of time, and I'm like, well, fuck, now I've got to come back next week and I'm gonna miss all this good shit.
But so I heard this last 2 weeks that there's 2 ways we really get in our own way, which I think is great, because they fall into before and after, right? So there's resistance, all the shit we don't do to do the thing, And then when we get the thing or have the thing or like are supposed to be enjoying and celebrating the thing, we don't enjoy it. We negate it. We give the money away. We argue with the client. We sabotage.
Right.
And so then we create more resistance. And I love that's the Groundhog Day. I love that the people are saying that these days, because it does feel like that when you're in a cycle of self-destruction or self-resistance, any of that, when you're getting in your own way, it feels like it feels like a circle. And it does I start to sing that now whenever I feel myself like, and then I try to turn it into Afro circus, which I think is hilarious. Because it's funny. It should be funny. No beating self up,
Well, because that doesn't work. If we're reframing the language, beating yourself up about it is literally the opposite of what is going to be effective, right? You can't. You have to be kind to yourself. And I think that may be one of the hardest lessons to learn. So what's the other way we get in our way?
So sabotage, or resistance, the resistance. I think most people, when you're going towards something and not getting there, it's the resistance. I think sabotage is easier to spot. Personally, I mean, and I see the little ways that we do it, but that the resistance of like, or this won't work. And really it's getting into any like analytical place. So you get this great idea and you're going to go do the thing and it's like, and that's just fear. And the thing is, under that layer of fear, like the fear it's usually noble. I think fear is so good. And when you can see it as fear, it's trying to keep you in integrity a lot of times. It's not trying to keep you broke. It's trying to keep you in integrity. Like, but if you saying broke is part of your integrity of like, I will never be a dick. So many heartfelt spiritual people are they want to do it well. They want to have integrity. They're not totally sure. I mean, like, I think we'd all work for free if we could work for free. If we could work for free, who wants to deal with even the idea of charging, right? We would all be giving sermons on the Mount for free and giving out baskets of fruit. I would, but not this planet.
It's the Star Trek question. No, the difference between the Federation and the Ferenginar. Like, the Ferengi will always be about the money. I know Ferengi. I might personally be a Ferengi. I don't know. Like, there's something about money for me that is very compelling. Like, and not the work, the money. And it's not even about the buying either. It's I don't know. There's something about money which, I think my husband and I talk about this all the time. What would it take for us to enter into a post-cash kind of economy? At this point in time, it's food, right? If everyone can eat and no one is starving, then money becomes less of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to think about that for a little bit. Like, I mean, I do think about, because of my tribal heritage, like what life was like. If I have money issues around something, I'm like, okay. If I think about a car, right? I haven't bought a new car in years, and I went and I was like, they're more expensive, right? So, and we tend to have a little set point. Mine is more about the last time I bought it than it should cost. But I was like, oh my God, this is what they cost now, right? Like, I haven't bought a car in 8 years, and because I love my car and I can't find anyway. But when I think about it, like, okay, so here I am and I need a new horse, right? I need a new camel. What am I looking for in a camel? I'm like, of course I'd get the camel I want. I would get the one that has the great saddle with the pink and blue tassels. He would have really cool. I maybe give him a lip tattoo. I don't know. So.
You'd certainly get the camel you could get along with, right? The one that didn't fit right in your face. You'd buy the camel that you.
Yeah, I'm not going to go buy an alpaca or a donkey, right? You know, or one that's too small, like, because it gets, it eats less hay, you know, like, like, because money wise, I actually really like having money. And my money story that I've been rewriting has been that I grew up with a lot of money. I was very ashamed of it. I got teased mercilessly. I can't say I was ever bullied. I was terribly used. And I felt like my goal was to pay for all my friends who couldn't pay for anything. I had nice cars. I always had the car to drive. I always had the gas money. I never asked for gas money. I gave my money away. And then ultimately, I gave my money away. Ultimately, I gave all of my money away. Literally, I signed it away. I signed away my trust fund. And I'm still now finally coming to grips with that, right? It was meant selflessly. It was a very bad decision. But what I am seeing in the gift in it is that who am I without it? Because I knew who I was with it. I knew what I thought my roles were. I was very self-conscious. I hated the people I grew up with because I thought they were shallow as shit. And I hope none of them are on here. I'm still dealing with that, right? But
that
I didn't.
God, that just comes so immediately is so telling.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, and I'm saying it's like, it's easier and easier for me to have these bigger amounts. And then I realized, like, what is it? I like still processing those things. And so how does that get in your way? Like, talk about something that gets in your way when you're like, okay, I really like these nice things. I love first class travel. I love travel. I love these. I love the spend lavishly on the things you care about. And then who cares about the rest, right? Like, So when it gets in the way is like, how do you charge what you're worth? And as my prices have gone up and up and up, it's like, especially when you have clients that are like, oh, it's more now, like a lot more. I'm like, yeah. That's still something I work with, but as I work through it and stay on top of it, it's something that, like, I make sure not to put that fear into my offers. That's, you know, I think where my courses, I struggled with them because I was like, I want them to be affordable, but part of me was like, fuck, that's cheap. And then there's this like, but I have to prove it's worth it. And then the whole thing just got so tight that I look back at, I ran into some of it. I was like, and the new stuff that I'm putting on, like, this is how I'm offering it. I don't advertise any of my readings, and I'm getting referral after referral after referral. And I just model the energy of, I will not launch anything until it's in the energy of that. And it feels great.
I've had so many programs in the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 months that have come up that have been beautiful and brilliant, and that I have let go because the timing isn't right, or because I'm not right for it. And I used to really, like, every single one of those, I would grab onto and I would write it until it was dead. And then I would not get anyone and I would be surprised, right? Like, when the energy of the thing is right, it all falls into place. It's so effortless when it's supposed to work the way it's supposed to. And I think for me, that's how I know when I'm doing what I need to do correctly, is when it feels easy. If it feels hard, it's not in alignment with what I am supposed to be doing.
Yeah. I mean, and even the difference, like I say, to to wrangle one of these refunds went so against my soul. I was like, I'm like, okay, ultimately I cannot. Every time I would be like, go to pay that, I was like, something else would be like, hey, you need to pay this instead, right? And it wasn't a lot of money. And I was like, it's interesting that it's a 4. It was $400, right? It was not a big return, but every time I was trying to return it, I was like, ugh, right? And I realized I'm like, I'm in total resistance because I don't agree with this. Like, someone, and this person's not in the group, and I don't think I'd be able to identify. So someone had traded me a paddleboard for some websites almost a year ago, and I was like, it's It's been a long time, but here's where my integrity, I was like, okay, what feels world-class communication, great service, and beauty to me? Okay, so we negotiated a cash price. I offered to let the person sell the websites, whatever. Their events all got canceled, and they're also very desperate for money. So I was like, okay, I just want to be in the greatest place from this. But I was like, I also, part of me was like, this isn't cool. I don't agree. We had a contract. I was like, well, I could return the product that I got in trade, which, you know, this is why I no longer trade. That once I was
you've
like,
used for a year, and you know,
and it wasn't something I could return in the same quality. I was like, look, if we would just did product back or something, and I had followed up with this person monthly, like, hey, we need to get these done. Your events are in June and April. No, we're not ready. No, we're not ready. No, we're not ready. By the URLs, all these things, and I was like, okay, all right, well, up to you. And ultimately, yesterday, I was like, let's do this. Let's just be done with this, because this is eating a place of my brain that I no longer want to give energy to. I was like, okay, this is how we can do it. And bam, bam, bam. All of a sudden I was getting like messages and, oh, hey, you want to sell this? I want to buy this. I was like, done. I was like, I bet you this will be done by 4:00 today. Done. And it was over. And I was like, I felt so good to be like, but when I could get in that place of like not being right, I was like, what do I really want? And this person, I have to say, what does this person think of me? Maybe she thinks I'm a bitch, but I did it. I followed through. I kept my word. And hopefully we all walked away not happy, but with a lot of integrity. Does that make sense? And once I agreed that was okay, it was like out the door. And that's how I want to deal with anybody with refunds. The other person too, this is kind of cool. Actually won on the painting refund, because this person wanted this painting so badly. Can I get it for this? Can I get it for this? Can I get it for this? Just down. I was like, fine, you really love it. I'll charge you 1/3. This was about 1.5 years ago.
You've learned better since then.
And ultimately I got a huge painting back that I would have charged a lot more for. And I may not even wanted to sell in the first place. So returning it, I was like, you know what? Some part of me, like when I was like, okay, this is fine. It was so easy to pay it. It was so like, you know what? I never meant to short sell myself in the first place. Right. And so since those things have all happened, and there was one other thing. What was the other thing? Oh, the guy. Oh, can we talk about the guy real quick? Talk about things that so people liking me. One of my big things. I want people to like me. I'm a human being. I want people to like me, but I also want to be able to, I'm not going to walk around and like duck. So some guy hated on my painting that I wasn't even finished with. And by golly, if I didn't sell that thing before it was even done by the end of the day. And I chose not to respond to his comments. He was like coaching on my painting style. I have a very loose, wild painting style. The thing didn't even have a face. It didn't even have a face.
It was not even close to done. And his comment was it was terrible. I was like, nobody asked you, dude. What the hell?
And I was like, how do I want to respond with this? I'm like, okay, I know that my art is not for everybody. If you want perfect representation, take a picture or find a classic oil painter. Oh my God. Yes. I love that. I love that kind of work. I just don't want to paint a horse with 3 little things. And so I said, what do you mean? He goes like, did he eat something bad? I'm like, cause it was kind of this chartreuse background. It's really beautiful. It's actually really beautiful. It's very tropical, very Cuba. It's just super cool. And I was like, well, what do you mean? I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I was like, great.
And then he doubled down.
He doubled down on like, well, if I wanted to be an art, I want people to know, I appreciate feedback. I'm like, who are you to coach me on my painting? If I'll take your class, if I want to learn from you, Robert Joyner, love that man, right? Bob Burridge, hell yeah, right? Like those guys have coached me And they're like, loosen up, feel more. You know, it wasn't like, don't use green. I did get some great advice of don't use black. I love that advice. Like, don't use black for shadows. It creates interesting. But in the end, I was like, am I going to argue with this guy? I didn't even respond. I did unfriend him because I had given him three warnings on my posts where he's like coached or what. I was like, this is my private life. And even just in dealing with things, but it's no coincidence that three people I got to confront my own fear of, like, as I'm expanding, as I'm about to do more spiritual teaching, which has been one of my secret lives for a very long time, that now I'm going to start teaching more of this publicly, that it was like, oh God, what are people going to think of me? I'm like, they're going to not like it. Some people aren't going to like me. Some people aren't going to like my work. So that's true for all of us. And I think that's a big one for a lot of sensitive people that are out there trying to create beautiful things. And it's not to do it for approval. I haven't painted for approval for a long time, but when someone comes and says, like, it looks like barf, I mean, that's a lot. And I mean, that's a lot. Mm-hmm. And it didn't hurt. It didn't stop me painting at all.
When I was 18 years old, I received a scholarship to Outward Bound. So 23 days, I was in Utah with these mostly younger, like they were younger teenagers. They were 15, 16. I was the oldest out of all of them. And they hated me. Like, oh my God, they hated me. So we're in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, we do not need to run to our location. Like, there was just all of these pacing questions, or can we take a break every hour instead of, it was intense. And it was 23 days of sheer unadulterated loathing. Like, I have never in my life been so disdained by every single person I was surrounded by. It was a really interesting learning experience for me, because nothing I could do made them like me. There was literally nothing I could do, and I was stuck with them. And so I had to learn, people are not going to like you, and you can't let that reflect on who you are as a person, or what you mean, or what you bring to the table. Because if people don't like you, there are just as many people who do, right? That's resonance.
Well, and I think, like, when you're really called, when you're like, man, I should teach this, and it sounds crazy, right? Like, or this is like, what is this thing, this download? Like, there's people who need it. It's whether or not you're going to step in to be like, I'm going to go ahead and teach it. I have no idea. Like the stuff that I'm looking at is like, okay, I wonder if I have those, audience numbers. Do I have audience? I'm like, really? Like, I would only take 8 people because it's a quasi live, like, I would only take 8 people anyway. Like, I have thousands of friends on Facebook. I probably know 8 people who want to learn shamanic studies and, like, how to deepen intuition, right? That was part of my question here, is like, what have you guys learned? What's your, I'm very torn between wanting to do 101 kind of work. And I was like, oh my God, there's 6 classes. But it was like, okay. The first one, though, I had this vision of, like, and here's the thing is, that didn't come from nowhere. This vision, I was walking, I was like, what would it be like to walk through a grounding, clearing attunement for 3 weeks? Like, I don't know that I had the words for this yet, but the feeling of it was there. And that is more real. I know that that's more real than the meme I would create for it, right? So when we're coming, like, and I want to shout out, I don't know why, because I think it's captivating to Amber about her posts with her mug. They're becoming one of my favorite posts, right? Like, it's like, see my soul, see my art, see my badassness, like, and I'm already in love with her work. So simple. So simple. When you're tuned into your stuff, doesn't have to be, we use our brains for like resistance way too much of like, I have to have the websites have a purpose. All the tech and strategy that we love has a purpose. But if your shit isn't on board, if your soul isn't on board, the more spiritual you are, the more likely you are to fucking destroy it before it's even going out there.
So many projects that have never seen the light of day that I have killed because I wasn't confident in me, not in the project, in me. And that's I think where the line is for so many of us. Like, we can build the thing, but at the end of the day, do you feel like you can deliver the thing? No, most of the time, no. And that's true for everybody, right? Like, imposter syndrome is not a thing because everybody fucking experiences it. You can listen to people who are at the top of their game, actors, writers, politicians, people with money, who will say, I'm still afraid I'm going to lose it all.
Yeah. And you know, confidence does come from doing it. And if you have launches that like flop, 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 right? And you don't get into why you flopped, did you pull the plug? Did you have an unclear outcome? Are you not connected to your audience? Like if you flop and you don't know why, I've been there, like you're like, what the fuck? I love this idea. Was I totally confident in it? No, because I was looking for the proof in the sales. Kaboom. Instant kaboom, launch flop, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're like, this is amazing and you should come, which is how I feel about my new stuff. I'm like, people are going to come. Even if they don't come, I don't care. I'm doing it because it's amazing. Like, I'm going to do it for me and walk people through it. I also realize I have resistance to the word leadership, teacher. I don't like authority, right? But you say facilitator, guide.
Fascinating.
Right? Circle energy, where I would teach in a circle. I teach in the circle in live in when I do those kind of things. I like want that energy of walking through the trees with people on the beach in Tofino, talking about, do you feel that? Can you pull it in? Where do you ground it? Where is your power center? Where are we doing this? How do you activate that shit? I don't need a webpage for that, right?
No, you don't.
Right.
You really do not.
So, I got so caught. I just went away for a minute because I had a great thing. Oh, I don't know. Where'd we go?
It's gone.
I went away.
It's gone. It's imposter syndrome. We were talking about imposter syndrome.
That's what it was. Launching, imposters, fail. Oof, still can't find it. It was about like, I had this brilliant, like that relates to the thing, but oh yeah, imposter syndrome of proving it. Nope, still that's not it. Not gonna dig for it. It'll come back if it's meant to.
Or it'll come back at 2 a.m. in the morning, you know, right? When you're fast asleep and it'll sit you straight up in the middle of the night. Oh crap, that was the thing. Yeah, I'm sure it's not just me.
Well, I want to express to you all that if you're frustrated, I know what it was. Think of the things where it comes in like that. Like this morning, I was like, I'm going to get money from nowhere. I can feel it. I'm like, I'm okay with money from nowhere because I'm super solid in what I'm teaching. So I'm okay with some like money out of nowhere, right? I opened my email. Hi, payment 546. I was like, thank you. I don't know where the hell that came from, right? Like, I haven't been launching. I haven't been selling. So for you, where are the things where you're so aligned with it that you're like, I don't sabotage this at all. I don't miss this at all. It comes like that.
For me, it's about receiving. I still have a hard time receiving. And part of this is upbringing. Part of this is pride. Part of this is I had to train my husband into allowing receiving too. Like when we're trying to generate income jointly, it's not just my energy that matters here, it's his too. And he was very against receiving for a long time. Like, I don't want to be a grifter because that is a very lower class thing for men, right? They don't want to ask, they don't want to beg or borrow. That's unacceptable. So being given receiving was a tough lesson for him to learn. And so as we expand into that, right, it's become more and more, what can I expect to come my way? That's been it for me. What's coming for me? I know that it's coming. I just have to have faith that it's coming. But that's the hard part.
I think when you were saying that, I was thinking about the masculine and feminine energy. Like my masculine is normally the place that's like, I do it, I get it, I command it, I boss the people, right? And when that takes over and becomes too much like, I'm going to make this shit fucking happen today if it kills me. Tell me how those days go for me versus the days where I'm like, I'm just gonna see what happens here.
Tessa says it's easier for her to ask and receive for others. When we talked last week, she told us about manifesting $20,000 for her daughter because but for yourself, that's just so much harder. And I am right there in that place too. It's easy for me to ask for things for other people with no expectation of it for me. It's much more difficult for me to expect and receive for myself.
Yes, I've been hacking that for a while now with places it gets to go, right? Like little pockets for it. So I find that it's very easy to pay the obligations, right? I was always responsibilities first, fun second. If you get the hard work out of the way, then you can have a good day and have fun. But I'll tell you, when that starts at 4:30, it makes for a suck day. So I have this little hack of like, okay, so if I'm going to do that, if I'm going to continue to do that, then I'm going to make, okay, I need 10 grand for bills and I get 2,000 to play with for a month, right? So it gets to have a little pocket of like, oh, it goes in the play money envelope, or it goes in the soul restoration envelope, or it goes in the fun envelope. It's not just, I need $12,000 a month because that's what I need. Well, that feels like, bleh. I mean, that just instantly makes my stomach hurt. So that's my little hack around like for other people, because the bills are for other people. Bills ultimately pay other people, right? I'm not billing myself. True. So I was like, okay, the fun is and then the fun money usually goes for other people too, right? Like, we'll talk when we get to the savings, because I'm working on investments of like, I have a Fidelity account.
I never
have. It has money going into it, right?
I never have a problem generating what I need. I still have problems generating what I want.
Oh, I'm actually finding I'm really good at what I want, because I'm like, oh, I want that. I'm like, but to pull in like from that place of like, I want it, and not in the I want it because, like I'm looking at travel, because now travel is showing again on the ads, right? I'm like, oh yes, and then I'm thinking, what would it take? Like yesterday, I'm like, what would it take to want that money to pay that bill? What would it take to want it? Because although I need to do it, I'm really hating doing it because it goes against. I'm like, oh, how could I want it? I'm like, my word is fucking law. My word of paying people is law. I want that. I want my integrity. I want my badassness. It might not have always come from the perfect place, but it worked. So I'm okay with that for right now. Like that, yeah, it would be great to be like, to pull that in as easily of like effortlessly. It wasn't effortlessly. I fought myself the whole fucking way, but I got what I wanted eventually. And it was really an integrity. And I slept I crashed at 8:30 last night. I was like, boom, because it had been on my soul. Yeah, when things are out of integrity is when we're like in mass resistance around, and then for some of you, you're just offering shit you really don't want to do. I mean, there's the truth. We've all done that of like, I think this will work. This is the part of me that makes money. I'm always good at this. I can sell this. And then the whole time you're like, this feels like salt on my soul. I feel like a little snail getting, and then you don't have energy to do the shit you love.
So I got I can't remember which coach this came from. I always hate when I lose the source, but it was when you are looking at pricing something, what feels good internally. Imagine yourself doing the task. Imagine yourself saying, this is how much I charged for it. And then see what that feels like energetically. If it doesn't land well, you are not charging enough. So keep on pushing that price up until you can imagine yourself doing the thing for however much money you said you'd do it for, and being like, yes, I feel good about that.
I think we've all undercharged, but have you ever overcharged?
No, I don't think that's possible. I'll be honest. I'm not sure overcharging, especially in service-based businesses, is possible. No, I take that back. I'm not naming names.
No, but I was like, because I think most people can identify with like, I undercharged because I have undercharged, and you're like, oh dear, wow, I sold this from a place of desperation, or this is like, I didn't envision the work, or I feel like, man, I'm overgiving, like my, I don't know, 70 pages of Write Your First Chapter course that I wrote in PDFs plus 5 lives for like $100 and some. Like, it was a lot of work, right? Like even just hour wise. And I want them to feel amazing. I want to over deliver where people are like, fuck yeah, I had a great time. I feel amazing. This was, and not so like I was so overwhelmed I can't go through it. I mean, I love it when people do that, because I took a course recently where I was like, I don't know how to get through all of this. This woman's amazing, and she's giving me so much. But it felt like really great value. It didn't feel like this should be more. It felt like, man, she's badass.
I'm confirming, Tessa, you definitely still undercharge.
Probably. Yeah. But what is that feeling of like, has anybody here ever like, man, I kind of walk that person over the coals, like, sucker, like that feels gross too. I mean, like, I don't know that I've sold products like that before in my other life where I was like,
that is definitely not worth the amount of money I am charging you for this.
Not so much in my own coaching, but yeah, in other things. But
in filmmaking, there is a concept called the Uncanny Valley. We talk about it a lot on my podcast. So when you are filming something far away, there are problems with depth. So you can have people look fun, and usually it's about people. It makes them look funny. It makes arms and limbs really long. It change facial shapes. It does really weird things. I have identified that there is an uncanny valley in pricing too. That when we are looking at our prices, we often can't see the way other people see them. We're not seeing how they perceive the price. But for most people, when they look at a course or coaching or even a one-off card reading, they're going to say to themselves, that's too much or that's not enough. Now, that's too much is fine. If it's too much for that person, then they are probably not your right person. But what you have to worry about is that doesn't seem like enough money for what I'm actually getting. Because if you are not charging enough, they will, in the back of their brain, think, well, what's wrong with it?
That is how I feel about like, oh, that's so bad. It's really still dealing with my snob thing. Cause I was like, that's how I feel about some airlines where I'm like, yeah, the plane's going to get there. But it's like, are they paying their pilots?
Right.
Do they maintain their craft?
When
right?
Alaska is only charging you $59 for a flight, yeah, sure, I'm not getting peanuts and that's fine. But how is my pilot? Who's flying my plane?
right? Like, are they hiring the best pilots in the fleet? You know, like, and that's how you think is I look at people where I'm like, that's cheap. And we talk about free. There's free where it's like, I think free is an activator piece where they're like, it's connection, like, hey, nice to meet you. It's my greeting card. That's fine. Free where you're like, have half of my house, just come stay in my house for a couple days and then you'll see if you want to rent the Airbnb. What? Like, if you're like, hey, you want to see a quick tour? This is what we've got. Okay, thanks. Here's my $3,000. That's very different kind of Airbnb. I like to translate because we can be with coaching because coaching is everywhere, right? Like, I mean, coaching is everywhere price wise. And I see stuff where I'm like, I would pay that. And I surprise myself sometimes where I'm like, I would pay that. Like, yeah, I believe you. And it's surprising sometimes, isn't it?
I have a Facebook ad friend who is running some split testing right now, and I cannot wait until she is done because the numbers on this are just going to be absolutely mind-blowing. She's split testing an opt-in as free versus a $27 tripwire. So far, people are paying much more. They're buying it. So the opt-in is free. It's the same damn thing. It is literally the same thing. People are not signing up for the free opt-in. They are paying $27 for the exact same thing.
It kind of doesn't surprise me because like free, I learned for those of you who don't know, when I first published my book, I gave it away as an opt-in for my email on Facebook ad, a full book, the whole thing.
Well, because that was the way it was done those days.
And as soon as I started selling to my list, really selling to that list, I probably lost 30% of the people that I paid good money for and gave them a free book to. And they were like, why am I on this list? I'm like, because I give you a book. You know, and so I think now we agree that like opt-ins are things that get people to really like come into your soul. And you can say like soul greet, like we meet here. Are we gonna like, do you want to hang out with me? That's it. And if it's something of value, then charge for it, right? Like, I'm not saying that the soul greet, but like they're different things. I think now as opt-ins are not so much that ethical bribe that like the bro guys talk about, you know.
Well, nobody's downloading your PDF. Nobody's reading your PDF. And my email address, frankly, I'd rather not give you my email address for something free. I can make more money. I can't get a new email address. I just don't want your free shit because it's not doing me any good.
I love when people give me meditations. I love videos that I can watch because I will go back and watch those. Like, especially if there's something like, I love attunements. I love anything that I can listen to, or you're like your masterclass, even if it's a masterclass into your group, right? Like that you did in your group. I'm cool with that because like, if it's really, that's the real value. And I think there was this like, just create this easy guide to, or a checklist to like, sometimes checklists work if they're really useful. Like, you know, I could use one for right now for building my patio garden, right? Like I really could, like, what do I need for that? Like, you know, how do I set me up in 10 steps? Like I could use that. I'm probably going to do that more with you know what I'm saying? But knowing the value. So I'm interested in this group. Like a lot of people said that they get in their own way. How are you getting in your own way? Like, what do you specifically do? Because as we have evidence, we know exactly how we do it. Like, I was a stage 1 clinger in relationships. And once I realized I was like, I think I've seen that bridal. What's that movie? Wedding Crashers. Stage 1 clinger. I was like, that was me. And to see it so funny, I was like, I hate, oh yeah, love at first sight versus stage 1 clinger. Once you realize that, now it's so easier to be like, I'm like, okay, I still have pricing anxiety because I want to deliver. And so the antidote, what's your antidote? My antidote is to make sure that it's amazing. And if I was like gonna write that check and do it in person, would I love this? Does it feel real in person? Yes.
So yeah, for everyone who's watching, whether it's live or on the replay, the question we're gonna leave you with for today is, how are you getting in your own way? And the reason we're asking, it's not incidental. When you join this group, we ask you, what is your biggest roadblock? Nearly all of you, to a woman and man, I think there's one of those in here still, has said to us, me, I'm my biggest roadblock. So if that's the case, how are you your roadblock? What are you doing to get in your own way? And what can you do to get out of it?
And that gives us some ideas of cool stuff we can bring and show you our own things of like, you know, the order of destruction. I used to call it order of disaster. I used to call my life order of disaster. What are we solving in order of disaster? I was like, well,
gosh,
right.
how else are you bringing that shit in? When you're calling it a disaster, of course it's going to be a disaster.
Right? Like now I'm like, oh, we need an order of beauty, right? There's a big sign in my kitchen that says surrender to the beauty. Let's do it. Yeah, so very cool. We love your comments, love the interaction. Yep. No sound. I have no sound.
Oh, I was muted. Tessa, I've got your comment here. I'm adding it to the list. We'll compile them and we're going to do a bunch of stuff around this, I think, next week. So looking forward to hearing from all of you.
Yes. Awesome.
Thank you guys for being here. This is fabulous. And we will see you on Thursday for, what are we talking about Thursday? The magical ways of staying out of your own way is the,
yeah.
So Thursday is the new moon. And there are lots of ritualistic things that you can do to catch all the voices, to catch the blocks. So we'll be talking about some of those.
Yeah, write it into being.
Yes.
Very good stuff.
Yes. Indeed.
All right.
All right, guys. Talk to you
Thank
soon.
You.
Bye.
Bye.